is my thing. I kind of
All right.
I'm here with Arvid. I was just on Arvid's channel yesterday, so
Yeah,
this is fun. We're hanging out 2 days in a row,
I know.
and we go way back. We go back all the way to Tampa,
Back in the day. Those
and
those were the days, weren't they? Oh man, gone but not forgotten.
yeah.
Mm,
Those are good times, good
good
connections
times.
made.
Good times.
And so I talked to you a little bit behind the scenes. Speaking of like
Yeah.
connections, I've done this a couple times in Comicsgate where I'm like,
Hmm.
I have a Twitter account with people. I can like ask questions to see if I can interview anyone
Right.
and just do a little research. And it's not even like super deep; it's kind of casual. But I did it once for drug dealing. I wanted to know more about
Ooh.
drug dealing for a story, and everyone responded, "Narc, narc." Do not respond.
Right. So,
It's a lot harder to find the information on drug dealing.
it
So
is. I
sometimes,
would love to too. It is that is another topic of interest of mine. It is
yeah.
very fascinating. It's like that's like as pure a case study of capitalism as you could possibly
Oh,
get.
that's cool.
It is a really interesting. But like
Yeah.
you said, you're like, hey, can I? Right. That's like not a. You can't like.
What
You
I've
can't
come
like
up
go investigate
against,
their books. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not. I've noticed that as I get a little older, it gets a little bit easier to like. For example, even like writing police. Like I was so intimidated to write police in my 20s, but now I'm like I can kind of write police because you can kind of relax a little bit, but you can kind of like even just what you've seen at that point, you've ingested through osmosis enough like cop movies that
Right.
are like I watch a bunch of Columbo and you're like, okay, there's certain jobs they have, there's certain like uh things
Yeah.
that they do. But there's a few cops in Comicsgate too, and they did give me some advice and
No
like so
kidding.
it is like fun to like talk to these
Yeah.
people.
No, definitely.
So
Doing jujitsu. I did. So I know we're getting off topic, which is what happens with me. But it was great. Like, yeah, woo. With jujitsu, a lot of law enforcement guys do jujitsu. So it was great for me. I wouldn't be exposed to people like that. I just wouldn't be. So it was great for me. I know a lot more law enforcement now than I
yeah.
would have otherwise. It's great. I have like friends on police forces. Like don't mess with me in Western Massachusetts. I have friends. On the force.
Yeah. And then like in the case with drug dealing, it's like you can you can almost build it like logically in your head and it'll work and be pretty authentic. But then I'm always paranoid that I'm have a huge blind spot. So you're like trying
Yeah.
to figure that out. Cause you're like, you could just be like, and it's it again, it's like maybe not when you're 20, but when you're 30 or something, you can be like, all right, if I
Right.
was just even in this position, it's like you can't even you like, like if you even sell in a certain area, you're gonna make someone mad. Like that kind of logic
Right. Right.
is like stuff you got to think about.
Right.
And that sort of goes into some of this King Arthur stuff where I'm like, I just want to like try and figure out because it's kind
Yeah.
of so the basically part of this is I've been writing a King Arthur story,
Mhm.
and it's actually not even King Arthur, it's Percival is what it's focused on.
Oh, okay.
And it's I watched Excalibur, and then I got a point of inspiration from that because it was like we were talking about this on your channel, but that's like
Mhm.
too much stuff in one movie. It's all real fast bullet points
Right.
almost. And there's one bullet point where it's like King Arthur's sick for some reason. You don't even know exactly why. Mordred's kind of more in power now,
Yeah.
and then King Arthur needs the Holy Grail,
Right.
and so Percival eventually does get it to him, and then he kind of recovers and is able to kind of take his kingdom back. But then in that big battle, everyone dies, I think, or
That's
whatever.
right. Yeah. Mhm.
And so this idea though that Percival, I was like, oh damn, Percival with the Grail having to go into Camelot where Camelot is under Mordred's control, and he doesn't even know where King Arthur is because King Arthur would have to be kind of in exile to be kept safe.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if Mordred. This is like one of the liberties. I'm like, was Mordred even at that point in power? And I'm like, for my story to work, it kind of the way it ordered of the timeline. It's
Yeah.
like Mordred is kind of basically taken over. King Arthur's in exile. He needs the
Okay.
Holy Grail. Percival, then his job is like, okay, you need to go into basically enemy territory where even saying King Arthur's name is like dangerous, and you need to
Okay.
find out where King Arthur is. So that's like that. I was like, that's the movie, or that's the idea. Is like you have to find out where the guy is, where you can't even say his name because then people would kill you, or you don't know who to trust, and
Right.
you could maybe know someone who knows. Like you're like, okay, Lancelot would know, but where the f is Lancelot?
Right.
And so that was the idea, and then from that I was like, oh, I wrote a little like action scene to begin with, and I had
Mhm.
the Holy Grail, some actual kind of like comic booky powers came out of it that were kind of
Oh,
fun. But
huh.
it has 3 rules, and the first rule is that, or it has a power. The power is that it heals you, or it can heal anyone with the
Okay.
water. But then the rules are you have to, if you're carrying it, you have to heal the land. Like you kind of have to heal everyone. You can't be discriminatory with who you help. And you
Mhm.
have to
Okay.
handle it like you have to
Okay.
handle it, yeah. And then you have to handle it lightly, which kind of means if someone asks to hold it, you have to let them hold it. You can't be like precious with it.
Oh,
And then
interesting. Okay.
and then the third thing is you can't heal yourself with it. This is like these are like Percival's 3 rules.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And,
Wow.
and if he breaks the rules, it goes back to like what the castle of the Fisher King or whatever,
Right.
and then he has to kind of start his quest over. And I
Okay.
think it's kind of semi undisclosed, but basically the story begins and he's been trying to get the Grail to King Arthur for like about 40 years now, and it keeps like effing with him. He'll get really close and it will
Mhm.
disappear, and so he kind of
Wow.
hates the Grail, and he like kind of hates his life at this point.
Okay.
He's like, and and so that's like kind of the situation. So he has the Grail. Oh, and the metaphor is he's like a he's like a speed runner for video games. Like
Okay.
if you're doing a speed run and you're going for your best time, you always psych yourself out at the end. Or the metaphor applies to like even sports, or like
Absolutely.
if you're trying to hit like 10 free throws in a row,
Right.
I've been there. Like I can never get to 10 because at 9 I psych myself out. So
Right. Right.
that's the kind of the problem that Percival's dealing with, is that he knows like if he's kind of like broken, basically, if he
Mhm.
is like at his most hopeless and destroyed,
Yeah.
even like psychologically, and like kind of black pilled and nihilistic even, then the Grail stays with him. But the second he starts to heal and feel good about life, the Grail disappears.
Right.
So, and it's like there is like the Grail's like really effing with him,
Mhm.
and it is kind of like what is the agenda behind what the Grail is doing to Percival, and that's
Right.
like a little bit of the intrigue. And you find out in the kind of the middle of it that the Grail, it actually goes to other people if it's not at Percival, and the places it goes kind of reveal an agenda too. And the basic agenda is
Yeah.
just like it is kind of like a godly thing, and it's
Mhm.
making people grow by fucking with them. It's like
Right.
testing people kind of.
Mhm.
And so Percival, and so that's kind of all I got so far. And I've started
Mhm.
writing it, but the one of the problems I've ran into is just the first problem was like Camelot, and I'm like, okay, so Percival goes into Camelot. I need to even know what I'm dealing with
Right.
Camelot. And once I kind of unlocked that by thinking of it as almost like a Kafka-esque New York City. and
Okay.
then and then like that, like it has like it's like a sprawling like metropolis almost, but
Mhm.
like medieval style. But like, and there's like theaters, there's like abandoned theaters, there's parts of town that are like run down. And if you get further into town, it gets like more walled and nice, and that's
Yeah.
where like Mordred is.
So let
Um,
me just ask: is this like one of the best productions of Macbeth I ever saw? It was that University of New Haven like community theater type thing. There was a production of Macbeth. They did it like post apocalyptic. It's just one of the coolest. It really I remember to this day. I was the guy playing Macbeth was awesome, and but that's my question: is this post apocalyptic, or is this just you want the flavor of that? But no, we are in kind of Iron Age post Roman Britain.
yeah, I do think of it as Iron Age.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't want to take too many liberties with
Right.
that.
Okay. Okay. I think that's good.
Um,
I mean, there's not. It sounds like it would be better. I don't think you need to take those liberties. So good. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm trying to even think so far, like I do have like that, like as I'm trying to even put a little like culture and side plots of like culture in there.
Hmm.
So there's like a troupe of like performers that kind of play into the story
Hmm.
and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay, that's cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
So then just getting once I kind of knew
Mhm.
that Camelot was like that, I was like, okay, I can
Mhm.
kind of start writing, because I kind of dead ended. Uh, but then I start writing, I get further in, and then I was like, oh shoot, you know what I think I need to know though? I think I actually need to know the surrounding area of Camelot. But then I was like, but I don't want this to be a Game of Thrones type thing, which
Right. Right.
almost some of King Arthur's lore and parts of history are kind of like that, like big
They
battles, big wars.
they are. That's right.
Yeah, and I'm like, but because I think a big part of the it is kind of a revolutionary scenario in Camelot at the time. Like Mordred's worried about dissidents. He's outlawed the use of the word Arthur to the point that it's been enough
Right.
time that people don't remember the name anymore. And if you go into a bar and say Lancelot, like you could start like a war. Like people like haven't heard it, but some people know. And there's like cells. They're deliberately keeping the cells individual. So if they get leaked, then you just like lose that cell. So, but the idea being that at some point the plan is to combine the cells, and I think they might want to do it within the city because like they might be
Right.
arguing like, well, we could retreat to like Cornwall or whatever, and
Right.
that guy's friendly, and then we could gather an army, and then we could actually take it from the outside. But I think they're kind of arguing over whether or not to do that.
Mhm.
That's where like my blind spots come in a little bit, where I'm like, is that stupid? But what would really help me is, and I just kind of want to pick your brain about Arthur,
Yeah.
but that's kind of a direct question of the problem I'm trying to solve right now is to understand a little bit more of the world building and this problem of getting a cool kind of the world building of the whole land without it being Game of Thrones and it
Yeah.
being more just centered in Camelot, just a possible revolution in Camelot. But it could play like there could be like these satellite countries, but I don't want them to play too much into the story necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I
I
was
don't know.
reading about the collapse of the Roman Empire. You know, the Lombardic invasion of Italy. You know, Lombardy, Italy. They were a tribe of Scandinavians, and they came into Italy. They liked it so much they decided to stay. They're still there. But no, it is amazing because that history really does read like a fantasy novel. It like you said, it has that Game of Thrones feeling, but it's like it's real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they said, yeah, because it said from the little amount of research I've done, it's like, because that was one thing I was kind of fascinated that I somehow missed this, but my whole childhood I've known Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur,
Yep.
and I know the Holy Grail, Excalibur, Merlin, all this stuff.
Right.
But I didn't know. I was like, wait, why is he famous though? What did they do? And you watch like Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail.
Right. I know. Yeah.
They don't even get the Holy Grail in that one. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, there's little short stories. And I was like, I didn't even know they got the Holy Grail. I thought the point was
Yeah.
they didn't get it. But then like, okay, they did get it. And then I was
Right.
like, but what even did Arthur do? Why does everyone say he's so badass? I'm like, oh,
Right.
he's kind of like, Napoleon or whatever. He's like
Right.
he had a lot of victories. And people are like, oh, that's really
Right.
impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, to me, it's like, this is the period of history. This is, it just, I can't get enough of it. I'm just nuts about it. It's from the fall of the Roman Empire until Charlemagne, basically. It's not
Yeah.
even the Middle Ages. You can't, they used to call it the Dark Ages, but that's sort of looked down on because of course, it's too much fun and it's too heavy metal and it's too dark. So, of course, academics don't like that. Yeah. So they call it the migratory period. No,
Okay.
that's what it's called. But that's the
Who
crazy. Yeah. Sorry.
who's Charlemagne? I'm not even too familiar with him.
Charlemagne was the guy. He was the I was in Frankfurt actually. He's called Karl the Great. He's called Karl in Germany. They call him Karl. But he is he was a Frankish warlord, and he is considered to be the person. I mean, like right or wrong, he's considered to be the person who ended the Dark Ages. The medieval Europe is supposed to begin with Charlemagne. He was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in Frankfurt, and he united France and Germany into one empire, and he restored order to Europe. So that's when things started to stabilize in Europe, and it started to go out of the Dark Ages. But he also began the reconquest of Spain from the Muslims. So those are the kind of things he did. Yeah.
Cool. Is that like the Catholic Church becoming a bigger deal?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. And this is also, I mean, this is like, this is the First Reich, the Third Reich, the Nazi Third Reich. They considered themselves, it's crazy, but they thought that they were reuniting the empire of Charlemagne. So this is, yeah, this is the first. It's so funny because Reich just means empire in German. It's like, or, it's just, but every time you hear it, you're just kind of like, oh God, guys.
Yeah.
So anyways, yes, this is the first.
Yeah. You know, I was talking with some people last night. We were kind of laughing because it was Kissinger passed away, and
Yeah,
he's a German who escaped Germany when he was a kid or whatever.
yeah,
And then a bunch of NASA are all Germans that escaped
mhm.
Germany.
That's
And I'm
right.
like,
That's right.
I, and I'm like, dude, all the smartest people, you know, Einstein, literally all the smartest people were
Yeah.
Germans. I'm like, dude, they
Mhm.
are pretty badass.
No, Chester Nimitz, German.
Yeah,
Dwight
yeah,
Eisenhower, German.
yeah.
Did you know this? Sorry, we're getting off topic again, but the British called the American consulate in World War II in London. They called it the Eisenhower Platz.
That's funny.
It's very British. Yeah.
So one of the things I heard about
Yeah.
King Arthur was
Mhm.
that he fought the Romans. And they say I heard they say there's almost like two King Arthurs if it is historical, because they're
Yeah.
it's like 200 years apart that it covers. But the first big, like maybe even three things. One was kind of like uniting the turmoil of the land. If it's like a bunch of
Yeah.
different kings, kind of uniting them all, and they have a pretty big army at that point. And then they fought off Rome, and then 200 years later they fought
Yeah.
off the Anglo-Saxons, which is like Germanic, I guess. And
Yeah.
is that ringing bells?
Yeah, yes, those are the English. I mean, this is the interesting thing about art. So many interesting things. This is why it's called the Dark Ages. No one actually knows. I mean, but it's there. There probably is an historical Arthur. In fact, there's really no room for doubt about it. But what did he do exactly? It's probably a collection of myths of different Romano-Celtic warlords at the time who do different things, and all the myths got combined into this one person. That's one possibility. But yeah, that's right. They the Germans became the English, so he was actually fighting the English, or the people who eventually became the English. Yeah, he probably spoke a language related to Welsh, so it's not a Germanic language. But more than that, to me, that's the most fascinating thing is you just don't really know much about him.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it because that was another mystery I kind of remember when I was learning about it, is like it
yeah,
almost feels like the legends are, because they feel like almost biblical or like older than the Bible
right,
even in a weird way. But then
right.
he's Christian in the Bible, or in the Arthur stories, he's
That's
Christian.
right.
He's searching for the Holy Grail and stuff. So it's like, how old are they? And you're like, well, they're not that old per se. They're, like, whenever
Right.
it's like when people were telling the legends, if it's like 1200, then it would have been like 400 years ago or something.
Yeah,
Or
right,
like,
right.
when did Charlemagne like start? When did he start his thing?
Oh God, good God, good question. I think this is in the 11th century. Here, let me look this up really quickly.
Okay.
Um,
So yeah, that kind of fits with a little bit what I'm saying, is like it feels
mhm.
like these myths
Oh,
were
earlier
put.
than that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Please. Yeah. King of the
But these
Lombards. So this is like 8th century, 8th and 9th century. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's still,
Mhm.
that kind of means the like these myths are becoming like myths and legends in a
Yes.
span of
Exactly. Exactly.
in a kind of fast, yeah, period of
Yeah.
time, like for
Yeah.
in 400 years basically. And I'm
Right.
like, I wonder, we yeah, I guess that is not that ridiculous. I'm like, that feels like
No.
pretty fast, but
Right.
um
No, definitely not. Yeah. I shouldn't really say Welsh. Probably a language related to Welsh. It was probably like Brythonic. It was the indigenous Celtic languages of Great Britain, but it's just it's related to Irish. It's probably pretty close to modern Welsh, but again, we just don't know. But here's what's interesting about Arthur too is there's kind of three phases. This is just my understanding. I don't know how deeply you've dived into this stuff, but the original Welsh source material doesn't mention the Holy Grail at all, as far as I know. That's like a medieval invention that was added on to the Arthur character after the fact. If I'm not mistaken, let me look that up too. I am pretty
that
sure of
that
that.
rings true. I mean, I actually have no idea, but that feels like that makes sense kind
Hmm. Yeah.
of.
The
I
next
know it was
etymology.
a lot where a lot of the stuff, it all got put together. It's like the Mortis de Arthur or whatever. It's like
Yeah, Les Meurtres d'Arthur. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. No, I'm right. So I'm right. For once, I'm right. Yeah. So in the original Arthur stories, there is no Holy Grail. It's not mentioned at all. It was I'm remembering this now. I got heavily into the Holy Grail for another story that I did. It was actually a French guy, like poet writer who came up with the idea of the Holy Grail. So yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, and that one kind of stuck, the Holy Grail.
right. It did. Yeah. So there are, in my opinion, this is just I'm an autodidact. I don't know if this is true or not. It's probably not. But I sort of break it up into like three stages of the Arthur myths. They're the original stories, which are recorded in Welsh, and here actually, where is it? Yeah, here. This is the Mabinogion.
Cool. Let me
These
make you big. real
these
fast.
these are this is meaningless. I just did this to make people think I had actually read it, but
Nice.
I haven't read this. So these are the original Welsh stories. Some of them are about Arthur. I think there are other sources of the Arthur story, but these did not.
Oh wait, Arthur. Sorry, you got muted. Unmute. It says
We're
your
back.
mic.
We're back.
Okay, cool.
Can you hear me? Oh Jesus.
Yeah. Now it's the
Hang
amateur
on.
sound though, but I don't mind. But Pete Smetty
Technical
hops on.
difficulties. Okay, Mike.
I'm gonna catch up with the chat real quick. Praetor asked, "Did I make up those rules for the Grail?" Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And it was trying to think of it almost as a comic book. I was like, I just want
Right.
it to be like almost like superpowers kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So the original Welsh stories, these did not survive very well at all. Like these are garbled. Like I was all excited. Oh, Welsh mythology and Celts and love it. The story did not survive very well. Like the stories are very confusing.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
bardic
hilarious.
poetry. Yeah, like like well, in Ireland, the harp of Ireland. Oh, the harp of Ireland. It's the harp of the bards. The Welsh bards, but it's not like Dungeons and Dragons, but that's not what
Yeah,
it's like.
it's
That's
like
not what
that
it's like.
stuff came later. I wonder
Right.
a little bit about that. Because I've heard like even like people writing plays in Rome and stuff. It's like it's kind of some of them when I hear about them, I'm like, it sounds like that guy got real excited because he kind of invented a new thing, and it was like the most simple, basic, almost annoying thing ever.
What
But
do you
it
mean?
has like he might have invented like a little bit of dramatic irony or something, and you're
Mhm.
like, and they're all like, yes,
Right.
groundbreaking, and you're like,
Right.
oh, it's kind of like
Right.
boring. There's like one thing to, I don't know. So I
Yeah.
wonder like when
Right.
people got actually good at storytelling. I've read
No. Right.
a couple books of big fairy tales, and I
Yeah.
did notice I was like, ooh, it seems like the Middle East ones are pretty badass, and like
Yeah.
maybe like the getting into the Anglo-Saxon ones get good. But even if I guess if
Right.
you go too far back, they can get garbled and weird too. But
Yeah. What you like with bardic? It's actually kind of like you were a historian. You had to okay, this battle happened, and here were the warriors, and this warrior killed this warrior, and these were their epithets, and this is what happened. So it ends up being it's like a lot of laundry lists of names. No, this is like the strangest things. It's like
yeah,
there's like two sentences of story, and then they list all of the warriors that are in Arthur's Hall, and then the
yeah,
story ends. Like
yeah.
another two sentences later. And it goes on for 15 pages of just listing the different warriors in Arthur's Hall. It's very strange. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
what were they into back then? There was like name dropping, and who could be like,
Yeah,
I've heard
right,
that name.
right,
Oh,
right. Yeah. No, exactly right. No, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. So so that's that. But Sir Kay, he's usually like Arthur's unworthy elder brother, kind of like Jacob and Esau. Like Arthur's like Jacob, and then Kay is his sort of oafish Esau-like elder brother who's not worthy of Excalibur. That's
okay,
sort of how
yeah,
that myth played out. But it's interesting in the original stories, Kay is actually Arthur's right hand man. It's his number one warrior. That they're not related, and they actually have a sort of mutually beneficial relationship. But that's just one of
cool,
the interesting changes in it.
cool.
Yeah.
Real quick too with the chat, I want to let you guys know. I know Alex is here posting links. Thanks,
Oh,
Alex.
Alex, what's up?
Alex, if you do have the link for Arvid's mailing list, Band of the Crow, please post that one as well. And everyone sign up for Arvid's. Band of the Crow looks amazing. So
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, you did. Thanks, Alex. Thank you. And thank you, Narvel. Much appreciated. Yeah.
no problem. Is Band of the Crow coming out next spring? Is the idea or something?
Yes, that's the hope. We are it might be next summer. We're doing this big animated trailer. It's going to be awesome, but it's also like I know it's way more. I put way more than I can chew. Sometime next year, I promise. Yeah,
Cool.
it is gonna be awesome. I can't wait. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Thank you.
So one of the like the little this is like maybe more of like a modern kind of interpretation, but it's funny trying to like kind of rank either if you're team Lancelot or team Arthur.
Right, yeah.
And and
It's like
and
Beatles and Rolling Stones, yeah.
yeah, and I'll
Mhm.
see like because it's funny because they're both cool. And then I guess, yeah, like it's hard to choose. Like that's kind of a weird story sometimes if you're like, dang, I like them literally, I like them both. And then they fight and kill each other. You're like, I guess that's like a tragedy, but like it's still
Yeah,
kind of a cool story. But usually what they do is they sort of make one of them bad. So it's a lot easier for the audience to pick a side.
right,
But it's kind of hard. And that's kind of a little bit of the fun of it,
right.
actually, I think is
No,
like,
that is and let me also say that is one of the core elements that it's very Celtic, those love triangles. That happens
yeah,
a lot in Celtic myths, and that's one of the most interesting things about you see that in Celtic myths all the time. There's an elderly king, a beautiful queen, and a warrior that has an affair with the queen. But Guinevere, Arthur, and Lancelot is a great example of that.
yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, so I saw Excalibur, and then just last night I was like, I should watch a little more Arthur for like research. So I watched First Night with like Sean
Oh
Connery and
yeah, that's right.
yeah,
And Richard Gere, isn't he in that?
yeah, Richard
Yeah,
Gere.
that's right. Is
So
that good? I've never seen that.
okay,
Mhm.
it was like it was accidentally hilarious. So no, it's not good.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Okay.
the one thing that made me laugh was like they do kind of build it up like Richard Gere and the woman are gonna like finally kiss or whatever, and they finally do, and it's like a good cinematic kiss for sure.
Mhm.
And then literally right that second, Sean Connery barges through the door, sees him, and goes, "Oh
Oh
shit!"
no. Oh
And I was
no.
like, "Dude, you guys are moving fast. Like they
Right.
didn't really even have an affair; they just kissed once."
Right.
Um,
And I think that affair is handled really well in the Excalibur movie, the John Borman movie from 1982. I do think that's handled with finesse
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah.
one. Yeah.
There's a French movie called Lancelot du Lac too. You ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't. When was it made?
Like the 60s, I think. And it's a
Oh.
famous director too. I can't think of his name right now, but he's
Mhm.
actually a really good director. And that
Oh,
movie's
okay.
awesome. But I'm trying to remember, like, I kind of should rewatch it because I don't remember
Yeah.
other than thinking it was good. But it was like, I kind of remember being really focused on Lancelot and
Mhm.
Guinevere and kind of, I think they do a lot of talking and debating, like, but it was
Oh,
pretty sweet.
okay.
Um, yeah. So, yeah. And then,
Mhm.
so you were
Yeah.
saying though the three stages
Okay.
of Arthur.
Right.
Let's
So
go
the
over
first
those.
one is like the Welsh bardic phase, which is like, it's you can extract some meaning out of it, but the fact that it's so garbled is great too. It's just like what so much is lost, and it just gets your imagination racing. It might be worth reading this for you. I don't know, but anyway, the second phase would be like the medieval phase, the medieval romance phase, like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, perfect example
Mhm.
of that. And it shifts from being about like bardic, heroic, legendary. It's more like it's a triumph of Christianity over paganism, basically. That's the big theme of all the medieval Arthur stories. Like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain is like um he represents Christianity and order and stability, and the Green Knight represents paganism and darkness,
Cool.
and that's that. Yeah. And there's a love triangle. Sir Gawain gets, if I remember correctly, Sir Gawain gets into sort of, they never actually have an affair, but he has a lot of sort of naughty conversations with the Green Knight's wife. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
so
I remember that fairy tale or that Arthur story, and I remember liking it a lot. That
yeah.
one got made into a movie recently, and I don't know about the movie, but
Oh, it
definitely.
was like woke, right? Didn't they make them? They made them all like
Yeah, it
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 was
kind of
weird. I was like,
I
what?
actually I didn't finish it because it was just being a little too artsy fartsy, a little too like full of
Right,
itself. And I
right,
was like,
right.
what's even the story? Like, I don't even know what you guys are doing.
Right. No, totally. I read it in Middle English, which is like it's Middle English is weird because it's like it's partly intelligible. You can like I can Dutch is like that sometimes. I can kind of understand this. So, but by God, by the time I was done reading Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, I could kind of sight read Middle English. So
Cool.
that was kind of cool. But Yeah, the when I took my medieval English literature class in college, I was just like, wow, these people are really religious. Like, wow, that's all they think about is religion, religion, religion. And the church didn't like romances like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight because it wasn't religious enough. And I was just like, it's pretty
But that's
religious,
like,
guys. I mean, what's
yeah,
the
that's
problem?
funny because it's like
Yeah,
more effective if it's a little more subtle. But the church is
yeah,
like, no, it must be. They're
right,
like,
right. Oh, is it Robert
uh,
Bresson that did it? I love Bresson. Oh man, he is awesome. Did he really do it? A movie on how did I
yeah,
not
yeah,
know?
because he normally doesn't really do period pieces or whatever, I think. But I'm
What
trying to
else?
think because
Yeah. What else
there's
did
like
he
one
do?
other movie I've seen of his that was awesome. But yeah, Lancelot du Lac is the one.
Okay. Was he the priest? Was he the Catholic priest guy? Who
Who?
is Robert Bresson? There's some famous French um director who was also a Catholic priest. Man, he is good. Is that Bresson?
Oh,
Hang on.
that'd be super interesting. If
Yeah.
that's cool though, I didn't know that.
It wasn't Bresson. I'll see if I can remember. Sorry, we're getting off track again. So yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So then the third
Yeah,
phase
so
of
right.
it.
The third phase is Mallory, and it's interesting. Gawain and the Green Knight is Middle English. It's very early modern English. The Death of Arthur by Thomas Mallory,
Mhm.
and that's it goes into more of like a romantic, not like capital R romantic. You know what I mean? Like more of like a nationalistic romantic phase, which is where we
And
are
is
today
that
with it.
does chivalry play into any of these phases more or less? Is it like related to religion or against religion, kind of? Or
Yeah, that's the thing. There's always there's always in feudal societies, there's always a code of honor. So the Celts definitely had a code of honors that it appears in all versions, but like in different forms. You know what I mean? And that's what's so interesting about it. It goes
yeah,
from like a Celtic warrior honor code. And the thing about the Celts is like the Roman ethnographers like Tacitus or whatever, they'd say, oh, those Celts, they were awful. They were cannibals and they would chop off people's heads and they would human sacrifice, and that was them. And the thinking was they can't have been that bad. They can't. The
yeah.
Romans are just trying to, but they did some archaeological excavations of like Celtic. The Romans are completely right about everything. It's like,
Oh,
whoa,
no
these
way.
people are intense. Yeah,
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 because the Romans, I feel like they
mhm.
call them like the barbarians,
Right,
is like
right,
what Romans call the people to the north, and that's that like the
right,
Celts, and is that the like what? Because then
right.
if Arthur was fighting people to the north, also were they like barbarians to him, kind of, or were they more like this is almost for purposes of my comic, like if there is like a force from the north, would they even if I'm trying to avoid Game
Yeah,
of Thrones stuff, but
it's
are they?
hard to know because the only trace of the language is in Wales. So there's another which I haven't read. It's called the Godothan or something like that. I haven't read this, but this is another collection of myth cycles related to the Mabinogian, but it's different. But it's this lost language. My understanding is that by the time the Arthur actually existed, pretty much all of Great Britain was Celtic at that, like Celto-Romantic at that time. Obviously, there was Hadrian's Wall, but up to Hadrian's Wall, it was part of Rome.
So
So,
that is a little inspirational though, because this is something I might look into a little more. Is thinking
yeah,
of like that. And they do play it sometimes this way. Even in like First Night, it's like they don't even call Mordred Mordred. They called him like Maleficent or something dumb. But
really. Call him
yeah, but
Mordred. Call him Mordred,
yeah,
bro.
but I have seen it as like Camelot under Arthur's rule is like godly and glowing gold, and then
Mhm.
Camelot under Mordred's rule is like darker, godless and heathen and whatever.
Man,
Um
no, I gotta say, I love the story idea you have because it feels like a great metaphor for what we're trying to do. I think this is just awesome. I mean, it's just
yeah,
like what we're trying to do. It's like we live in the reign of Mordor, the reign of Mordor, don't we? We're kind of like
yeah,
all
I
denizens of
did
Mordor.
think
It's
I
great.
did yeah, I did think like there's some modern stuff for sure. And I almost I'm like, do I want to like I don't know how much I want to even like embrace it because well the thing is
Right.
it's cool that it's there because then you don't even have to like overdo it really because it but I almost thought like I was like Mordred in my story I'm like he's almost literally like Joe Biden and I'm like he almost
Right.
has like a quote like I want to have him give like a speech where he's like stuff isn't even that bad. Like, why do people hate me? Like, I'm doing an
Perfect.
okay job.
I,
And
I love it, and I know you're a. It's great because it's subtle. I think you're not being too on the nose with it, which is also really great. It really, I think it's just an awesome idea. And my personal take is, who really cares if it's? You don't have to be. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the original stories are very garbled, and we have all these traditions that came out about them. But I think we're all permitted to put our own ideas into these things and make them
yeah,
our own. I think that's fine. I mean, it's you're
but yeah, but it is kind of inspirational to think of like, oh, early Celtic stuff was like super kind of weird and super
it
like
was. Yeah.
crazy. And it's
Like
like that, some of that playing into like my version of Camelot could be sweet.
no, it could be great. Maybe he's trying to revive those old practices. Have you ever
Yeah.
seen The Wicker Man?
Yeah, yeah. Is that
Oh,
Celtic?
yeah, it is. Well, that was one of the things that they were supposed to have done. They were supposed to have had these mass human sacrifices, and it looks like they actually probably did. Yeah,
That's awesome.
they were probably cannibals. They worshipped skulls. They would like take the skulls of their enemies and like 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 a Christian cross. You would like have a skull. So yeah, so they were pleasant people. So
Yeah. That is cool. That
yeah,
is very inspirational.
yeah.
So I'm a little curious. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, but it did confuse me when it's just on Wikipedia. I read it, but they say like for Arthur's third great kind of campaign after fighting the Romans, he was fighting an invasion from the Anglo-Saxons to the north. And I
Okay.
was like, who even is that? Because I'm like, if I even call him in my comic, like, oh, the Anglo-Saxons to the north, I'm like, that's from Wikipedia. I'm like, I'd be really nervous about like, did they call them they call it Saxony? Like, oh, Saxony to the north or something, like
Right.
Normandy to the south. And
Mhm. Well,
was it like that
actually, I
or
don't know if you know about this, but Essex means the
Mhm.
East Sax, the like the province or whatever. I don't even know what you call it. The Shire of England, the province, the Shire of England. But there's Wessex, Essex, and Sussex. Those are the South Saxons, the East Saxons, and the West Saxons. That's why they're called. That's what the sex means in all those. So the Anglo-Saxons are the English. That's the English.
Okay.
So that's Anglo-Saxons equals the English. So this is what I mean is Arthur was fighting the English. It's that in the Dark Ages or the migratory period after the fall of Rome, there were a bunch of Germanic freebooters and pirates who came over, and they liked Roman Britain so much they settled it and they changed the name to England. So that's England comes from the Angles, which are another Germanic tribe that settled in
Uh,
um, in Great
and
Britain.
is
So that's
they
literally
did
what England means.
okay, yeah, because that was a little bit in like the stories. They say like the original Arthur, yeah, he's not like from England. It almost sounded like he was from Rome. He's like related to some of the Roman people or whatever.
Yeah, but I get it's not really clear. He was probably a Romano-British, a Romano-Brythonic Celtic warlord or something like that. It's a little hard to know who he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So is Wales, this is like betraying some of my what my the shit I don't know, but is Wales like more southern then or like Welsh stuff more southern
Let's like
slightly?
my understanding is this that the and anyone in the chat correct me. People in chat are like way smarter than me, so please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff. My understanding is that the Anglo-Saxons landed in places like Kent, but they also landed in places like Mercia and Northumbria. I mean, like it wasn't like they just like showed up all at once. Also, it was like a generational thing. So that was that. But Wales is to the extreme. Let's see if I get this right. To the extreme west of Great Britain,
Okay.
and that's just where the original inhabitants. Just that they kind of that's just where the Anglo Saxons never really got made it that far, and probably because of like tribal Celtic warlords like Arthur, who just were able to like defeat them and send them backing the other way. So that's why
Yeah.
Wales exists today as a separate country. but the language that Arthur spoke is probably more closely related to Welsh, or it is, in fact, there's no doubt about it. It's more closely related to Welsh than it would be to, English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That is cool too. That the kind of a little bit of the idea that part of what Arthur did that was cool is kind of stamp out his own little culture that stood the test of time, that didn't
Yeah,
get really
exactly.
conquered and
Exactly.
yeah. So if the Anglo-Saxons came in and kind of they weren't the native people there, were there
Right.
like native people up there and they were like barbarians or something? Or like,
Again,
where are the barbarians?
well, up past Hadrian's Wall, I think that's where you would probably draw the line. The people to
Yeah.
the north of Hadrian's Wall. Forgive me if this is too dry and tell me to like give me a shock color. Like this, I'm like spurting out. This is. I really appreciate this, Nara, but this is like
Every
give me a
answer
shock
just
color.
gives me more questions. So no, it's
Okay,
good
yeah,
though. Yeah.
yeah. But that was the dividing line for the Roman Empire. They never got past
Okay.
Hadrian's Wall, and that's basically the boundaries of modern day Scotland. But the people at the time were not the Scots; they were called the Picts, and there is a question about whether they were Celtic or not. There's not a lot is known about the Picts. So yeah,
Okay. That did come up with it's in like Mordred Arthur or whatever,
yeah.
like because they said in Mordred's army when it was like Mordred versus Arthur, and Mordred's army was all Picts and something else.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
And
funny.
maybe like
Yeah, the Scots are actually from Ireland. Again, in the migratory period, that's when Irish tribes and bands they migrated over to Scotland and they displaced the Picts, and so that's how Scotland became Scotland. The Scoti were an Irish tribe. Yeah,
yeah. So there could be an element. A lot of this would be like just background, and it's good for me to just even know because it could just help the story. But it could be good if there's like kind of a cultural battle between Christianity and the more Celtic crazy stuff, and that's kind of happening in the background too. And
absolutely.
Camelot was like a bastion for Christianity, but then some of the this it's not as big a deal as you get away from Camelot. And that if just thinking it through, that would actually kind of benefit Mordred. Mordred's leaning more back into the Celtic stuff.
Yeah, it
And
would. And, I don't know. I know the first Christian king, the legendary first Christian king of England is Cymbeline. Shakespeare wrote a play about it. I don't know when. I don't think it actually was Christian at the time that the Anglo-Saxons were settling it. I actually don't know that question at all.
yeah,
In other words, I think that was a medieval invention. That the idea
oh
that
yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean. But I mean, you could definitely do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what's funny is it's almost a little bit of a Star Trek feeling with the Prime
Oh yeah.
Directive and stuff.
Oh,
It's like,
absolutely.
yeah, it's
Absolutely.
like it's the Knights of the Round and everything, and yeah, like going out and whatever. It's
No,
or
this
yeah,
is what I love about this story that you're telling. I think it's just awesome because um I think it's from Parzival, which is it's considered to be the best Grail romance. I haven't read, I think that's the only one I've ever read, but that's supposed to be the best one. But there's a great scene in it where the Knights of the Round Table are there and they say, Arthur, we've got to go. We've got to find the Grail. We have to leave
yeah,
you now. And Arthur's like weeping. He's like bursts into tears and say, you're going to leave? We did it. We have peace.
yeah.
And you're going to leave me? And they say, Arthur, nothing that we did means anything if we don't go out and find the Grail. It's all for nothing. We have to go.
Cool.
We have to leave you now. Goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye,
it's
Arthur.
awesome.
Right.
It's awesome that the
Beautiful.
Knights of the Round,
Beautiful.
like they're all like doing their own thing, kind of
Right.
like, and
It's
then they come
beautiful.
back once in a while. At any point in Camelot, there might be two or three of them like hanging out, but
Right.
usually they're out and about.
Right. It's like a sailor
Yeah,
coming home from sea or something like that. But I love the idea that in this story, Parzival comes back. He's like, okay, I got the Grail. I got the Grail. And then he realizes, uh-oh,
yeah.
it's just starting now. Like things are about to get like, no, this is not the end. This is just the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah,
I think it's
shit's
great.
not how I remember. That's actually, I was thinking like
Awesome.
in initial part of the idea, I'm like, does it end just when he gets the Grail to Arthur? Because I want it to be like this is like a 2-hour story, like full. I
Yeah.
usually write as just like a movie script, but like full movie, him getting it the grail to Arthur, and then it's like, yeah, then other stuff would happen, like then they would fight or whatever. But I'm not sure, yeah, exactly where it's going to end yet. I'm actually still kind of figuring some of
Mhm.
that out.
I
I was
think
going
it's
to
a
say
great
though,
idea.
thank you. You know
Yeah.
what's another kind of hilarious thing about First Night with Sean Connery and
Yeah.
Richard Gere
Yeah.
is they have the Knights of the Round in that movie,
Mm.
and it's like kind of like a war room sort of scenario, which is
Mhm.
that's sort of how I'd imagine it, like a place for men to go to like talk about some
Yeah.
serious shit. But then right next to it is Guinevere's throne in the movie. So she's just sitting there and they're talking
Oh,
about like
wow.
manly shit. And she just
Uh,
like, they cut to her all the time and she's like,
mm.
yes, yes. And
Like
then
Mussolini going.
yeah, yeah. For one, it does. It's funny. It's like a little early. They definitely like tried to feminism it up a little bit. Like they made her
Right.
badass and all
Mhm.
this shit. And like she
Yeah.
sat in on the table. She was there for all the war room meetings. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, but they're just meeting, and then she's just right. She's just there, and you have to obligatorily cut to her awkwardly watching them talk for like various periods of
Right.
time. But
Wasn't it Julia Ormond? Was that who played
yeah,
Guinevere?
I think
It
so.
was,
She's
right? Yeah.
beautiful. I know she's
Yeah.
in Legends of the Fall is also, so she was in a
Okay.
couple.
Yeah. I think
Um,
the actress they got to play Guinevere in the 1982, I thought she was perfect as Guinevere because she's like, she's not quite a femme fatale, but to me, I thought that was just, she did a great job. She was really well cast. I thought she was
yeah,
perfect
because
until you match her.
the biggest problem with it, anytime those stories come up, like there's another one with the love triangle. It's called like Charge of the Light Brigade. You ever heard of that one? It's like maybe a black and white movie. That one, but
Oh, okay.
it
I mean, I
starred.
know of the Charge of the Light Brigade, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Iron Maiden. Who doesn't know the true
yeah,
bond?
yeah, totally. And it's like, yeah, it's the guy who plays Robin Hood. Errol Flynn is in it, so it's an Errol Flynn
Oh,
movie.
oh, really?
And
Okay.
it's a great movie, but it's funny because it's like, yeah, the love triangle thing. And the thing is like the girl, it's hard to make her likable in any
Okay.
scenario because she's
Right.
the one who's like effing everything up, kind of
Yeah, no,
even more.
indeed, indeed. No, and that's what I like about in the John Borman movie. She's not really likable. You understand she's like very attractive, but they don't really try to make her, in my opinion, likable. So I like that about it. She's just sort of she comes off as a little bit frivolous, and she's just a little bit lacking in
Yeah. See,
self-control.
that's a good way to do it now that you mentioned
I
it,
think
because
so.
that even wouldn't have been necessarily my first instinct, but that's way better because like, oh shit, don't even try to force it. Like that's kind
Right.
of what they did with First Night, as
Yeah,
they
right.
kind of forced it.
Exactly. Exactly. You can have a character. I don't buy the idea. Oh, all characters have to be three-dimensional and complex. No, they. Oh God, no, they don't. No, they don't. Like, okay, sure. She had her moments. I'm sure she had her moments of angst or whatever. But it's not
Yeah,
relevant for the movie. So just or the story. So just yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I'm just catching up a little bit with the
yeah. No, go for it.
chat. Uh, yeah, and there's nothing particular to read out loud. But this is good fodder and helping. It is helping me a lot.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
just even knowing like the picks, because so like even because like say I don't want it to be a Game of Thrones style story, but they're
Right.
still there. They're just like in a time of like not necessarily war, and it is an option. Like you could, like if you have your cells and you're like not like Mordred, but you
Definitely.
can't really do anything in Camelot right now. It's an option. Like we have some, you can have some friends outside of Camelot. You can go to them and try to
Yeah,
figure. So they would debate kind of whether or not to do that. I think that
definitely.
might be because that's part of the plot that it has been developing. Is it is like this spy story with the counter revolutionaries
I love
and
it.
the cells and stuff. And yeah, and so that is a little bit. It can get ungainly or it can be
Yeah,
intimidating, and so that's part of the aspect that I'm still kind of figuring out. That
yeah.
Percival kind of walks into this scenario like they're like he's like where where's Arthur, and they're like don't even say that. No, we don't even know what you're saying. And he's like, where's Lancelot? They're like, nobody knows where anyone
Right.
is. Everyone's
Right.
like either in exile or in hiding. Good luck. And
Right.
that's kind of like almost the beginning of the story, and he's
You
trying
know,
to figure out.
I say start with a bang. He mentions Arthur's name sort of innocently, and like he immediately gets into a fight. Like people try to kill him immediately. You know what I mean? Just go for the
Yeah,
jugular. He's just like, wait, whoa, 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 and you're like, he can't. Nope, nope. Just you know what I mean? Just go. Get the
yeah,
story
yeah,
going. Just like
yeah. That's awesome.
go
Yeah,
for it. I
Yeah,
think that's, you know what I mean? And that would really show, you know, show don't tell. It's one of my, I hate that. Like, oh, okay, the show don't tell. Oh, God, what the hell does that mean? But I do think that's a good example of show don't tell. Like, he mentions the name Arthur and people instantly try to kill him. It's like, okay, now I know what the stakes are. And
yeah,
like, he's
yeah,
not going to do that again either. Like, okay, I will not mention the name of Arthur again. I think it's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, that is awesome. And that's kind of like the one of the big ideas that just made me want to do it in the first place.
right.
And then the kind of second thing that evolved from the process of writing with it a bit is the idea of the Grail, and that the Grail can kind of be like personified by, well, actually kind of just being a cup. And
Yeah.
it's almost like he's playing chicken with it, as he's carrying it. And he might talk to it.
Mhm.
I don't know, he might talk to himself, talk to it. But I know one thing too is at one point he does get arrested and chained up, and then in his jail cell, because the Grail kind of abandoned him, and then it reappears in his jail cell just out of his reach. So it's like totally kind of screwing with him. It's like,
Oh, that's great. You know, there's that
um,
great, they say Thomas Mallory was a knight, and they say he probably spent a lot of time in prison because there's a lot of scenes of knights getting imprisoned and all the, this is specifically from the death of Arthur. And
oh
it's some
yeah,
of the best passages of it. He just talks about all the inhumane treatment that people receive
yeah,
in prison.
cool,
So that's right there in the source material too. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that is cool,
Mhm.
cool, cool, cool.
Yeah. I mean, you can
Um,
also talk about, you know, maybe this is one of Mordred's, one of his rationalizations or one of his pitches is that look, the Anglo-Saxons are invading.
yeah,
You got to listen to me, bro. They're out there and they're massing
yeah,
for another attack. And maybe part of it is Percival has to go to the Anglo-Saxons for some reason. Something
yeah.
like that could be very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that we kind of grazed over this, and I forget, like, if I call them, if it is like the people kind of to the north. Oh, there's the Scots and Picts are to the north,
Yeah,
and
well,
then
right. Yeah, the Picts, right. So the Scots are settling and displacing the Picts at this time. Yeah. So
okay,
the Anglo-Saxons are displacing, you know, the people that became the Welsh, and the Scots are displacing the Picts at this time. Yeah.
okay, and so the Anglo-Saxons, would they be called like like Mordred in character? Would he actually, like, the dialogue would be like, "We got the Anglo-Saxons messing with us in the north"? Or does he use like that word, the Anglo, or would he call them just Saxons, or would it? Do you know?
He probably there's the legendary invaders of Great Britain. They're called Hengist and Horsa. Those are their names. You could even have them as characters as well. I think this is around that time period. Yeah, with an E, Hengist. Let's see if I just want to make sure so you can like Google it later. Yeah, Hengist. There we go. Yeah,
Cool.
Hengist and
Horsa.
Horsa. Yeah,
Got it.
just like Horsa. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like Alex says, English history is muddy, much like the land. It's great because there's probably a real Hengist and Horsa. Also, they're probably real people, but it's a lot of, but not much is not. What can you say about them? Not
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, this reminds me too. A lot of the kind of inspiration too.
Yeah.
Or in general, I found a lot of inspiration in uh, Machiavelli's The Prince. Have you ever read that?
I haven't, but my brother has an interesting take on it. What was your take on it?
So I haven't finished it. I'm just halfway through, but that's enough to be like, damn, this is sweet, and I got to finish it. But it's on a, like, it's on a book on tape, so I haven't
Yeah.
driven. But I think I note to self, I just want to finish it. But
Yeah.
it's a lot like, it's not quite what I thought the reputation was, which the
Right.
reputation
That's
seemed to be
right.
like, yeah, like the word Machiavellian, and it's kind of being a conniving, how to be like a conniving manipulator and gain power
Right.
is like, and it seemed like it was more like, yeah, you can, as far the first half even is like, yeah, you can ally with people to like gain power, but then the problem is you have the allies and you're not sure who's top dog, and then you also got to keep an idea in mind
Yeah.
how the people feel at all times. If the people like the previous
Right.
guy, so it's just all that stuff. Like, so you want to like revolt and take over a land? Here's like the do's and don'ts, and here's some examples of people who did it well.
Right.
And it's like he's like, you could rule by fear, and it will work, but there's this danger of this,
Yeah,
this, and
right.
this.
Right.
Yeah,
That's my brother. And there's a lot of people think Machiavelli is misunderstood. He says, like, look, you want to do good things? That's really
yeah,
nice, but you're not going to last 5 minutes if you're not realistic about this. If you want
yeah,
to do good things and you want to be a good person, you need to be a little bit ruthless sometimes. Um,
yeah,
I love his
yeah,
advice, and I think it's true. Again, I haven't read it, but he says, I think it's, man, it's brilliant. He says, never form an alliance with someone who's weaker than you because they will control everything. And it's brilliant. It's totally true. It's totally
yeah.
true.
Yeah, I think it seemed like he was kind of saying too, like, don't use a mercenary army. That will totally screw you over.
Right, right. And in fact,
Um,
I think that's what happened. That's the legend is that Vortigern, if I'm remembering correctly, Vortigern was the Romano-British sort of ruler of Britain. He invited the Anglo-Saxons over, Hengist and Horsa, as mercenaries, exactly like Machiavelli says. The
yeah.
mercenaries came and they really took a shine to
Yeah.
Great Britain, and they thought that they'd stay. So I think that's, yeah, Vortigern is, I think that's the name. Could be wrong.
Okay. Vortigern. Cool. I'll Google and continue some of this research on my own, but it is definitely
Yeah,
helpful. And yeah, like, but it is like that, even like Game of Thrones and stuff, it's a lot almost, or like it's not exactly like chess per se, because chess is more like almost like for battles, but it is like the Machiavelli stuff, a lot of it's like cause and effect.
right.
Like you can, yeah, like you can, if like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, he's like, yeah, you could team up with someone, conquer the dude, but that will, you'll still have a bunch of problems after that.
Yeah,
And it
right.
gives a bunch of
Exactly.
examples.
Right. Right. So it's just practical advice. And it's not because it's not for the purpose of doing evil. It's actually for the purpose of doing good ultimately. Like it's like an ends justify the means kind of a thing. So
Yeah, yeah, kind of what it seemed like. Yeah, like
mhm.
definitely a little bit more like he's encouraging.
Yeah,
He's like, you could do this, that's bad. You could do this, that's a little bit better. And
right.
he's kind of encouraging even like the best case scenarios of like, yeah, yeah. He's like, ruling without like murdering people to keep them in fear. That's better.
Right, right, right. Of course. Fear, just fear, right? Fear
Yeah,
motivates people. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, it sounds like a great story. Novel. It sounds like an awesome story. I think it has a lot of resonance, like today.
mhm.
The only other thing there is so much amazing illustration. I mean, World War One killed it. It killed it. It killed all this stuff. But
Oh, bummer. So
yeah,
it is
but
even more muddy or whatever.
well, it's more like there was a lot of interest in myth and romance and high adventure, and then World War One just killed everything. And then next thing there are Nazis in Germany, and we're in the modern world all of a
Yeah,
sudden. But it's my favorite period of illustration is right. It's called Edwardian sometimes. It's my favorite period of illustration. So there are some really unbelievably beautiful
yeah.
illustrations of the Arthurian legends. So that alone, in fact, there's one, I think I have it here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, here we go.
What about one last question before we go
Yeah.
to is it? I watched The Northman. Do you remember? Did you watch
Mhm.
that ever?
I haven't seen it, but just ever so quickly, if I may, Arthur Rackham is one of my favorite illustrators. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
He's just,
Oh, cool.
I know there's just nobody like him. He was English, and all these guys, Edmund Dulac, Arthur Rackham, they were all like out of work after World War One because no one wanted this stuff anymore. Very sad.
Yeah,
Very sad. Yeah. But he did some great illustrations of Arthurian
yeah.
romance. So yeah,
Wh-
yeah.
So my question is like, is it also kind of like a time where for example, even in the Northman, I got this vibe that like it would be a king, and a kingdom is almost like a little town on a hill. There'd be another town on a hill, and they have their own king,
Yes.
and a war would just be like two towns fighting, or they could team up like tribes more.
Yeah, exactly. There's this actually it's funny, it's a little uneven, but there's a series called The Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander. And when I read it as a child, I was like, strange. There seems to be a lot of kings. Like everyone's a king, and there's this character Fluther Flom, and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I was a king, but I didn't really like being. I preferred being a bard, so now I'm just a bard. But he's just kind of like a nobody, and lives like you're not a king. But no, exactly right. Like, what is a king? You're just like a glorified warlord with like a few villages under your control. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but that's the definition of a king. You don't admit anyone else. You don't admit to anybody else's authority. You're not a duke. You're not beholden to anybody. So
Oh yeah.
that's what a king is. So to me, that's the definition of a king. You're just the highest authority. Yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, in the King Arthur times, would it'd be like, I guess part of what Arthur did, he like do like some kind of like unite the tribes kind of stuff? Like he got other kings bringing together to make Camelot,
Yeah,
or he just
that's
be,
sort of the myth. It's a little
yeah,
hard. It's a little hard to know that definitely happened. I mean, in my opinion, anarchy is just early stage feudalism. So you have anarchy. You have lots of little local warlords. They start putting on airs, and they don't like being called warlords, so they demand to be called king, and no
yeah,
one can do anything about it. And
yeah.
then
They'll kind of remove themselves and move to new power. Yeah,
right.
Japan is like that.
Yes, exactly. It's very human. It's just right. Anywhere in the world, Africa, Japan, I don't care. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
Great
yeah,
definition.
yeah. They end up making what's it called? A pyramid scheme, kind of.
No, it really is. Feudalism is it's the world's first pyramid scheme. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
It really is. It almost is literally a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. You're so right. You're so
That's
right.
funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
I heard of there's a name that comes up too, and it's shoot, it's like the Duke of, is it like Yorkshire or something? It seems like to be kind of a big character in some of the Arthur stuff. And I was like, is that, I don't know what my question was exactly. I guess just
Duke of York.
Duke of, yeah, like it's, or like the Duke of like Essex or something. And there's just these like other dudes who are like, they're like kind of could F with Arthur, but they don't. And I don't know, they're like around kind of, and it's like bad guys. That'd be kind of the Machiavellian thing. Like
Mm.
Mordred could go to them and be like, yo, you're under Arthur right now. I'll give you a better deal if you
Right,
help me take
right.
him over. And then, so I guess if I can, I guess I might want to try and include something like that in the story. They could be like you're saying. It could be Hengist and Horsa. That'd be. I should look them up. That's kind of cool.
I think that would be an awesome idea. Put these things together. And, yes, people are going to say that's not historical. That's not historical. But you know that. We're all smart enough to know that. And
Yeah.
if people are interested in learning the actual history, they can learn about it. No one's
Yeah. Yeah.
preventing
What
anyone from learning about any of this stuff. Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of the what of like, I think it's called Flashpoint. Is that I actually haven't read it, but the DC
Mm.
Flash story where he goes to alternate universes,
Oh,
and then like, and each one is an opportunity to reimagine that. So they're like short stories, and they can be pretty fun the way they
yeah.
reimagine the characters. And it's like, yeah, you get a lot more freedom. And in that case, it actually has like the device. And this is more like, well, if you, yeah, like if you go straight by the Arthur stuff, you're kind of locked in. So my main idea
Right.
being like, yeah,
Right.
like what if it took
Right.
Percival to get the Grail, instead of doing it in a year or two, it took him 40 years. And like that really messes up the scenario. Like Mordred's way in power, Arthur's way in exile, and then they got to figure it out from there.
I think it's one of the most brilliant things about Game of Thrones is it asks the question, well, what if happily ever after isn't really happily ever after? It's great. They've slain the dragon, the evil dragon king or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's great because it starts after that, after the big story has supposedly happened, but then it's actually the beginning. It's just the beginning of a new phase of conflict and strife. I think that's totally brilliant on George R. Martin's part. And I think you're doing the same thing here. It's like Percival comes home and he's like, he's got the grail. And then he realizes, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
Cool.
It's like what happens to the hero after the quest is over, supposedly. I think it's a really interesting question to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and at a point where the hero's pretty tired of it too, and like
Right.
kind of
Right.
ready for it to be over.
Right. I was
And
just reading the Marquis recently. Do you know that one Marquis Guy Davis? Um,
uh-uh.
But Guy Davis is amazing. He said, "Yeah, I wanted to make all the main characters old. All the main characters. The Marquis is an
Mm.
old." I actually talked to him once. I said, "Guy, this is making an amazing um television series." "Oh my God, Guy." He said, "Yeah, well, everyone's old in it, Arvid. No one wants to
Oh,
watch a movie about old men." I was like, "I'd watch it, guys." It's like, "Yeah, you and like 5 other people would like to watch it. No one else
yeah,
would."
that's funny. Yeah, maybe I'm in a phase or something, but I love that. And I was
I think
like,
it's a
I
brilliant
mean,
idea. Yeah.
that's like The Dark Knight. That was Frank Miller's great idea to make Batman
Right.
old.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great casting. Star Trek. I think we were talking about this on my stream. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Patrick Stewart was an old bald man, and what
Yeah.
brilliant, what courage the casting director had to make that choice, and he totally nailed it. I mean, he just carried that whole series.
Yeah.
So it's not true, obviously, that you can't make a television series about old men that people won't watch, but it is true that Hollywood executives believe that. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much we
That's
know.
true. Cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yes. So I'll leave it there with my little document, some other stuff to follow up, and
Yeah.
I'll keep you abreast of whatever little developments I have going. We'll DM a little bit. I
Great.
really
That's great.
appreciate you. Yeah, let me bounce ideas off you and consulting a little bit with the King Arthur legend. That was awesome.
Yeah, Arthur Rackham, check him out. He's one of my I don't know if you haven't heard of him before. He is just one of my favorite illustrators. He
Okay,
did
yeah, Illustrator.
yeah, how is it spelled here? If just so you can Google it here.
Rackham.
Yeah, Rackham. Yeah.
Nice. Got
There's
it.
just and there's I don't even get me started. There's a whole bunch of other illustrators from this.
Cool.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
I could go
And
on for
14
hours.
people watching, everyone. Can we post the
Hey,
link for Arvid's mailing list one more time, Alex? If possible, everyone
yeah,
sign
thank
up
you,
for
Alex.
it.
Thank you.
There's no excuse, chat. Everyone, please sign up for it.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
and yeah, Alex, thanks. Praetor, thanks
the
for being
best.
here. Snuggy Jr., everyone. If you're just
Snug, good
getting
to see
here,
you.
it was a good historical look at Arthur. There's a lot of interesting stuff. The main one is just stepping a little bit outside of, okay, yeah, like Merlin, Holy Grail, Excalibur, blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah,
oh, there's like military campaigns and stuff like
right.
that. And it's like the Romans, the North, the Picts, and the Anglo-Saxons, the Germans, and I'm saying out loud to even remember some of the stuff I
Right.
said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the German pirates kind of coming into where Britain now is,
Right.
and they become modern day British. They kind
Right.
of resettle it,
Right.
and Arthur fights them. Is who
Yeah,
he
which
fights
well,
them.
that's I call it. This is just my little term. It's not so much they call it like sword and sandals, like the Conan style. This is more like mail and spear, like mail coats and spears. It's just this like I just
Yeah,
love
yeah.
mail. Yeah.
And it came up a few times. There's like boats and isles and sea and ships and sailing and pirates, and I got to
Yeah.
remember that too. And like piers and docks, and that's all cool too.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I remember that.
Yeah. No, it's an island. It's an island. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool.
Fish and chips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Okay.
with that, I'm gonna press the button so it'll end. So then I just kind
Okay.
of wave.